when darkness overcomes us and we cannot find our way. Although we keep on searching for the light of day, and we hear the children crying, and we don't know what to do. Gotta hold on to each other, and love will see us through. Let love rule. Let it guide us through the night, that we may stay together and keep our spirits calm. Only truths will shine the morning light, 'cause love's the only thing that will keep us safe from harm. Oh, I cover up my ears so I cannot hear the voices of hate and the voices of fear. And I cover up my eyes so I cannot see what's happened to this country that used to be free. Let love rule. Let it guide us through the night, that we may stay together and keep our spirits calm. Only truths will shine the morning light, 'cause love's the only thing that will keep us safe from harm. Oh, you know I love this country, every rock and every tree, the grasslands and the desert, the rivers and the sea. Yeah, you know I love the people, wherever they are from. Yes, I love all the people who call this land their home. Let love rule. Let it guide us through the night, that we may stay together and keep our spirits calm. Only truths will shine the morning light, 'cause love's the only thing that will keep us safe from harm. Let love rule. Let love rule. Let love rule. Let love
Hello everyone, my name is Belinda Briggs. My home is the Campaspe, Goulburn and Murray River country. My ancestors are the Willithika and Mothraban people of Yorta Yorta country, from these lands here that I stand upon before you today. Nyuanda gambana yapan yepu kumaraman yembana waka. Nina kucha damadama galnyan, yakarum jadamala yembana, irok buruk gara. Yembana binara waka, yana banga dana daya papara banarak. Nyanak nangari damananin, inan yana bura. Wunyangata dayong damnak nacho kumaraman yuandan. We stand together on Aboriginal lands. We give love and respect to elders past and present and ancestors born of this country that lived and walked here since time immemorial. We remember them in our hearts. May they watch over and protect us all. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the 12th Dangala Kiala oration.
Hello, my name is Karen Ferguson. As a proud Yorta Yorta Winya, it's my pleasure to be standing here in front of the Nanyak Wall at the Rumballara Football Netball Club to introduce this year's Dangala Kiala oration. As always, the Dangala Kiala oration is jointly hosted by the Kiala Institute and the University of Melbourne. It celebrates Aboriginal cultural identity with the goal of creating a shared vision for the people of the Greater Goulburn Valley region and promoting Aboriginal development. This is the 12th annual presentation of the Dangala Kiala oration and is this year presented by Dr. Lois Peeler, AM. Following the oration, the Honourable Gabrielle Williams, Victorian Minister for Aboriginal Affairs in the Victorian State Government, will provide a reply to the oration. This evening's proceedings will conclude with a panel discussion with Dr. Lois Peeler, AM, Professor Deborah Cheetham, AO, and Dr. Lou Bennett, AM. It is now my great pleasure to introduce Uncle Paul Briggs, OAM, distinguished Yorta Yorta elder, leader, mentor, and executive chairperson of the Kiala Institute.
Thank you, Karen, for that introduction. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Kiala Institute and the University of Melbourne, it's my good fortune to welcome you to the 12th Dangala Kiala oration. I'm co-hosting with Vice-Chancellor Duncan Maskell from the hallowed halls of the Rumballara Football Netball Club here on Yorta Yorta country. In opening the Dangala Kiala oration, I wish to pay my respects to all our respective ancestors and elders, to all our beautiful First Nations young people and the beautiful babies born across this country. In opening the Dangala Kiala oration, I also wish to thank Belinda for stirring deeply within us the depth of longing for Yorta Yorta language to be present in our daily lives, as it was in the time of our great-grandparents and ancestors. For acknowledgement to country in the language of our people, the Yorta Yorta people, freshwater people from across the mighty Dangala and its tributaries. It signifies the reclamation and the strong re-emergence of cultural expression and of language suppressed over the past 200 years to the very margins of society. To the brink of extinction, language accompanied the smoking ceremony performed by esteemed elder Auntie Rochelle Patton. Through the Rumballara Football Netball Club and the Kiala Institute, we have built over the past 15 years a strong partnership with Melbourne University that has supported the emergence of the Monaro Regional Centre of Excellence to be built here in Cheverton. However, as always, the 12th Dangala Kiala oration purpose is to question, to stimulate, and to inspire us to a better future. Who better than the strong Aboriginal Winyas of the Yorta Yorta Nation? MC Karen Ferguson, who is just completing her PhD. Belinda Briggs, Rochelle Patton, Dr. Lou Bennett, AM, Professor Deborah Cheetham, AO, and our orator, Dr. Lois Peeler, AM, who will all be speaking with you tonight or today. The Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, Gabrielle Williams, is providing the response to our orator, the Dangala Children's Choir, who are present with us. The Children's Choir has grown up inside the halls of the Rumballara Football Netball Club and have practiced inside these rooms. Tonight, we evoke and reflect on the strength of our people and the invincible spirit, the Nanyak, the essence of our spiritual being. It is at the centre of cultural expression and our sense of sovereignty. The invincible spirit, in a contemporary sense, was evoked in the aftermath of dispossession and at the time of federation. Men from the Cummeragunja Aboriginal Reserve formed the Cummeragunja football team that was to become known as the Invincibles. These were our fathers, grandfathers and uncles who played and represented Yorta Yorta people and Cummeragunja from 1897 through till 1932. They were defiantly visible when dispossession was raging along the Dungala and across the lands of the Yorta Yorta nation. They were so dominant that the rules were changed to force them out of competition. After 1939 protest and what became known as the Cummeragunja Walk-Off, our people lived on the edges of towns. In 1946, they played it as the All Blacks, won the premiership and were dumped from competition in 1947. We re-emerged in 1997 as the Rumbalara Aboriginal Football Netball Club. This story typifies the fighting spirit of our people and was populated by many champions, including my father Les Briggs, Sir Douglas Nichols, Uncle William Cooper and Uncle Jack Patton, to name a few. The theme for the 12th Dungala Kiala oration is honouring and claiming the invincible spirit of our ancestors from the many Aboriginal nations across this country. Thank you for attending and joining with us for this important event.
Thank you, Uncle Paul. It is now my pleasure to introduce Professor Duncan Maskell, friend and colleague of our Aboriginal community and Vice-Chancellor of the University of Melbourne.
Hello everybody, this is Duncan Maskell, Vice-Chancellor of the University of Melbourne. My thanks to my co-host Paul Briggs for his great welcome, and on behalf of the University of Melbourne, I'm very pleased to add my welcome to everybody. I also want to say how grateful I am personally for the ongoing friendship and partnership with the Kayela Institute, which supports so many great interactions with the Indigenous peoples of the Goulburn Valley and wider Australia. To make up for not being physically together in one place this year, I had hoped to film this message in front of the magnificent River Red Gums at the Parkville campus of the university, near where I live. Those beautiful trees predate European colonisation of these lands and form a treasured part of the university campus as a living reminder of tens of thousands of years of unbroken care for the land on which we stand by Indigenous peoples. Unfortunately, with the tighter lockdown restrictions since early August, we can't go there right now, so I'm recording this message at home. But I do want to acknowledge the traditional owners of all the lands on which the University of Melbourne stands at its several different campuses. The Yorta Yorta people, the Djadjaburrung people, the Boonwurrung people, and the Wurundjeri people. I pay my respects to all the Indigenous elders, past, present and emerging, and I acknowledge the many Indigenous friends and colleagues watching this year's Dungala Kayela oration. I'm also really excited by what we will experience in this year's Dungala Kayela oration. I greatly look forward to the address by our distinguished orator, Dr. Lois Peeler, and the expert panel to discuss the oration and other matters with Dr. Peeler afterwards. At a time when we all need hope, I feel very confident that in the 2020 Dungala Kayela oration, we will be inspired by Dr. Peeler's words, by the other voices we hear, and by the uplifting theme chosen for this year's event, the invincible spirit of Indigenous people and the vision of the future. Thank you very much.
It is my honour to introduce you to Dr. Lois Peeler AM. Lois is an extraordinary Yorta Yorta woman who has made and continues to make a significant contribution to all of us and to our collective futures. Lois is a woman who has grasped the legacy of leadership from her mother, Auntie Geraldine Briggs, a founding member of the Fakatsi Council in the early 70s, the Federal Council for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, to Auntie Marge Tucker, who wrote the book If Everyone Cared, to Sister Hillis Maris, who co-wrote Women of the Sun and established the Warrawa Aboriginal College in Healesville, on land that once formed part of the Corranderk Aboriginal Reserve, the birthplace of her grandfather, my grandfather, who attended the Corranderk School. Lois is the principal of the Warrawa Aboriginal College, Victoria's only Aboriginal school. Lois's journey is exceptional, from Cummeragunja Aboriginal Reserve to being the first Aboriginal fashion model in the 1960s. She worked with the Australian Wool Board and also worked on television throughout the 60s. Lois was also a member of the now famous Aboriginal women's group, the Sapphires, that toured Vietnam at the height of the Vietnam War. An educator, Lois has been an activist and a fighter for the rights of our people, whilst campaigning for the interventions against the symptoms of racism, poverty, disempowerment and marginalisation. Lois was Assistant Director in the early days of the Aboriginal Advancement League, one of our earliest organisations advocating for change. Lois has held senior positions in both state and federal governments. She has championed Aboriginal tourism and the development of a national accreditation program to present Aboriginal culture in a respectful and authentic way. Lois was awarded an AM in 2014 for her service to her people and to Australian society. She is a member of the Aboriginal Justice Caucus and the Aboriginal Justice Forum. Lois is a true warrior. Will you stand with me as I introduce the 2020 Dangala Kiala orator, Dr. Lois Peeler.
Let me begin by honouring our spirit ancestor of Yorta Yorta country, Bayami. I also honour our past leaders who have paved the way for us today. I pay my respects to elders, past and present, and emerging. My apical ancestors were river people. My mother's mother was Yamak of the Udulanyagan clan of Yalupna. My father was Woiwurrung on his father's side and Yorta Yorta on his mother's side. I identify as Yorta Yorta through my mother and Woiwurrung Wurundjeri through my father, whose ancestral river is Birrarung, or the Yarra. I grew up in my mother's country. Yorta Yorta people are river people. Our beliefs, traditions, sustenance, existence, and stories come from our ancestral river, Dangala. Nancy Cato, in her book, Mr. Maloga, which chronicles the history of Maloga Aboriginal Mission under Daniel Matthews, wrote, "The clans which gathered in the sandhills of the Great Bend were all river people. They came from an area with a 40-mile radius around Echuca, the meeting of the waters. They came from the winding Wakul to the north, or the Yakoa to the south, from Kyabram, the great forest, or Nathalia, the place with no stones. Some paddled all the way down the Kyala, or Goulburn River. The rivers the clans came from included the Murray, the Goulburn, Broken, Campaspe, Edward, and Wakul. They called the big river Tongala, the great water. The Murray River is sacred to Yorta Yorta dreaming. In this context, in the Aboriginal worldview, the Goulburn and Broken rivers that feed the Murray are of immense importance. As river people, other rivers that flow into the Murray, such as the Campaspe and Edwards rivers, are identified as being of importance, but of lesser importance. A senior elder stated that it all flows into the Murray anyway, so it's all the same. My grandmother Yamak often spoke of her earliest memory of life on the river, which she wrote about in From Old Maloga, the memoirs of an Aboriginal woman, and published in 1947. She wrote, "I remember when I was 3, Mr. Matthews came, my brother and sister and I ran and hid near the bank of the river. White man coming to take us away," she said. We were terrified. He was in a big dray with 4 horses, and Mr. Matthews was collecting all the Aborigines along the river. Mr. Matthews took us to the Maloga Mission. As a proud custodian of generations of knowledge, I can work towards recording and disseminating information. However, it is not only information that is required. I pose the question, is our story respected and valued? Knowledge acquisition is important, but a singular focus is somewhat misplaced. The imperative is also on hearing. I am not able to effect change on that platform. Today, I share with you in the hope that the hearing matches the cost of the sharing. Respect is so much more than creating a quiet space for the words and lives of others. Respect comes from a deep corporate and individual understanding of another's value. Therefore, respect and value are integrated to such an extent as to be homogeneous. One is dependent on the other. Without valuing, there is no respect. The importance of the collected river stories and history is not in the aqueous domain of sharing knowledge or in the safekeeping of facts and narrative, although that is vital. The real value is in accepting that the common experience of all humanity is vital for a whole people to survive and thrive. Believing that all stories have innate power and all stories make for life and strength and connectedness is the beginning of a healthy national meta-narrative. Until Aboriginal narrative, understandings, knowledge and spirituality are more than curios or benevolent additions to Eurocentric compilations, then there will be no real value in them to non-Aboriginal participants beyond a salve for colonial cringe and the satisfaction of justice appearing to be done. Our stories must be transmitted, adopted, and held as sacred by all if they are to empower our shared futures. The value of our oral history is in the identification of the resilience of our people and also in the potential for those stories to add their own richness and depth to the greater Australian narrative. With the details and facts communicated through the voices and memories of elders comes new ways to move ahead as we understand the complexities of our intersections, parallels, and collisions. Aboriginal knowledge and narrative has mainstream importance for survival, emotional health, and the general well-being of all humanity. We have a rightful place in the academic, philosophical, and political arenas that far surpass the value of preserving of Indigenous cultures and ancient ways. Yes, preservation is important, but more important is recognition and interaction with the knowledge that is shared. The gap in uptake of health, law, relational knowledge, and education is still cavernous. Mainstream Australia has not availed itself of the library of information on seasons, preservation, flora and fauna, caring for country on land and waters that the world's longest living culture embodies. Only true value and respect will enable this knowledge to be received and utilised in modern Australian contexts. Without our stories, our understandings, we will all be poorer. Poorer in every way. When this knowledge and understanding is integrated into the national psyche, then we will begin to truly grow, diversify, and enrich what it is to be a nation of people who have innate respect for original people as First Nations peoples. I believe we have a way to go. When such a grand integration occurs, there will be a national identity that rivals any other, while the many cultures that make up Australia will remain distinct. A new identity where there is national pride in Aboriginal culture will emerge. Australia will then have a culture as unique and resilient as the animals that live on the land. So in this oration, I offer knowledge and a proud tradition of rising up to engage, inform, and bring change to a culture that was foreign and hostile towards us, the peoples of Dongala. As for shared vision, well, that will emanate from shared sight. Sight that is focused on a future where there is a quality so deeply ingrained that we look ahead with such congruence, so as the vision is richer, greater, and brighter for all. The new vision will only be clear when the lens is equally Indigenous and non-Indigenous. This is a continuation of my desire and commitment to pay tribute to those who have gone before, to reflect on the challenges and honour the achievements of our change makers. In 2008, I undertook an Aboriginal oral history project and authored a report as part of the City of Greater Shepparton's River Connect program, The Cultural Landscape of the Flat, which chronicled the experiences of Aboriginal people who settled on the flat following the historic 1939 Cummeragunja walk-off. The poor management and authoritarian regime of the Cummeragunja Aboriginal Station, combined with the threat of removal of children, galvanised the residents of Cummeragunja into action to leave the reserve. The walk-off came as a final desperate response to have basic freedoms and the ability to thrive taken from our people. The story of one elder provides stark insight into life on Cummeragunja. The laws and restrictions on the Cummeragunja station were very tough for our people. A lot of decisions were left to the manager on the reserve, and if he didn't like a person, he could give them a hard time. I know some of our people who used to speak up for their rights were expelled. Living there, you were always under threat if you did something wrong in the manager's eyes. You were confronted with either being expelled or the police would pick you up. The manager threatened to cut off people's rations if they didn't conform to his ways of running the reserve. And in remembering the walk-off, he said, "I remember quite plainly that day. I was 16 years of age when our people packed their belongings in the old buggies, and some walked, some sailed their canoes across the river, others crossed the River Murray into Victoria on the punt with their belongings." So the collection of oral histories was undertaken in a spirit of generosity and a desire by the participants for the wider community to hear and understand an Aboriginal perspective about their lived experience. A sincere desire to share the depth and breadth and impact of this history gave the impetus for the creation of a body of information and experience. And as I expressed earlier, this project was an attempt to circumvent mere knowing and penetrate to deep hearing and understanding. History was being recorded. The voices belonged to those who lived the history. Those people who in their youth were not listened to or even given the right to speak for themselves had a platform to share. They came to speak to free themselves of some of the burdens of the past, but more than anything, to ensure the stories are recorded and remembered, to ensure there is the potential for their own history to last and to be cherished. The greatest hope is that in the telling and saving of these past facts, images and stories, that there will be an opportunity for change. Change is possible when there is a shared investment in recording and sharing of the lived experience of previously unheard and unheeded people. These spoken accounts of personal experience, feelings, memories and opinions are of people who participated in historically significant events in which they were deeply involved, whose feelings and memories are far from detached, and which are accordingly incredibly valuable. Valuable beyond the narrative, valuable as a catalyst for change. These stories must not just be enjoyed, studied, or recorded. For them to have power, they must be embraced as part of the human experience, the Australian experience, valued, integrated, learnt from, heard, embedded. The Oral History Collection program gives voice to the Aboriginal people's stories, remembrances, and experiences. Now, some of the memories and experiences of that period may not be particularly palatable in the context of the contemporary cultural vibrancy of the city of Greater Shepparton. However, during the period in which the stories were told, Aboriginal people were not treated as full citizens of Australia and faced many legal disadvantages and discriminations. Let me say too, that the philosophy and attitudes behind these policies were ingrained in the hearts and minds of many of the region's residents. Like any genetic code or nurtured trait, these beliefs do not just dissipate with time. Often they must be exposed, excised, and exorcised. Embracing new stories and historical experience, then adding them to national curriculum and records will not be enough to effect change to the Australian psyche. There must be some defined action to rebuild, remove, and absorb. Our national DNA needs to be altered, and this is no small thing. The collection of elders' oral histories was undertaken in a spirit of generosity and a desire by the participants for the wider community to hear and understand an Aboriginal perspective about their experience. As it is for any people who have survived and thrived under considerably difficult circumstances, there is an intermingling of pride and suffering in the retelling. Of course, there is some bitterness, but the overriding motivation is the desire to create something better for all. The achievements of Yorta Yorta people are a testament to the resilience and strength of our old people who sought to create a better life for future generations. Our people have produced accountants, academics, doctors, nurses, magistrates, teachers, poets, principals, and preachers and elite sports people, spiritual leaders, senior public servants, community leaders, musicians, and theatre writers and actors, artists and singers. In fact, the Cummeragunja Choir was a starting point for singers of all genres, gospel, country, folk, soul, pop, blues, opera, and even Eurovision participants. Our past leaders were at the forefront of calls for equality and self-determination. Consider the historic day of mourning held on the 26th of January 1939, organised by Aboriginal leaders of the day. But motivated by lived experience of life on an Aboriginal reserve, and key leaders in the organisation and conduct of the event included our Yorta Yorta people: Jack Patton, William Cooper, Doug Nichols, and Annie Marge Tucker. These are our heroes. Their names are etched into the history books of Indigenous Australia. They are added to the eons of our stories and reflect our true beliefs and traditions. They embody our spirit. It is my belief that if Australia is to be whole and vital, these Aboriginal heroes must become national heroes that we celebrate with pride and ownership, not as separate heroes of Aboriginal history, but rather individuals of national significance and pride. This will be achieved when our children learn about them at school and study them at university. It will be achieved when Aboriginal stories become celebrated and embraced as lifeblood of what it is to be Australian. Let us be clear that the struggle continues. Aboriginal community leaders of today are involved in efforts to decolonise government and tertiary institutions and to manage our own affairs, to drive down the rate of our children coming into contact with the justice system and the appalling incarceration rate of our people. The Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody found that the high rates of Aboriginal deaths in custody was directly related to the underlying factors of poor health and housing, low employment and education levels, dysfunctional families and communities, dispossession and past government policies. It concluded that the most significant contributing factor bringing Aboriginal people into conflict with the criminal justice system was their disadvantaged and unequal position in the wider society. Our people have long called for self-determination, and in recent times, the notion of self-determination has gained traction with governments. I believe, however, that many are grappling with the true meaning of self-determination. As a people who experience control of every facet of our lives, we avidly pursue self-determination. We know what's best for our community. Consider the achievements led by our community in the establishment of Aboriginal organisations such as the Health Service, the Legal Service, Housing Service, childcare, and many more, including Victoria's only Aboriginal school, Warrawa Aboriginal College. Aboriginal people have always made valuable contributions to the economic, sporting, and social development of the region, and still do. Our organisations are the lifeblood of our community and major employers of Aboriginal people across the region. In the Shepparton district alone, Aboriginal community initiatives include First Nations Credit Union, Rumballara Aboriginal Community Medical Centre, Rumballara Football and Netball Club, Rumballara Aged Care, Childcare, Kayala Arts, Manara Regional Centre for Excellence, Dangala Kayala Oration. We have a vision, a place-based approach to create a holistic future for our people, our children, our youth, and elders. The stories of our people in the oral history collection demonstrates our resilience, strength, and determination. In terms of community development, we have the capacity, we have the determination and the commitment. In this context, it is pleasing that the refreshed Closing the Gap framework is moving toward an agenda that partners with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, enables more community control, and embeds shared decision-making. This approach is based on local action, a determination to make a difference and to achieve change. As I said earlier, we do have a vision, actually a planned project. And substantial work has been done by the Kayella Institute, which has defined the following overarching objectives that this project should support. To develop a rights-based platform that recognises Yorta Yorta people's right to an economy and a future state of productivity post-dispossession. To set a clear regional trajectory towards Indigenous parity and prosperity. To activate the Aboriginal economy in our region through direct investment and support for enterprise development and entrepreneurship. Reposition the perceived social, cultural, and economic value of the contribution of Aboriginal people, heritage, and enterprise to our region. To build regional accountability for improving Aboriginal social, economic, and cultural position by defining activity and outcomes in a way that is specific and measurable. Central to its success is a coordinated approach and shared vision in improving the socio-economic position of the whole community. With an Aboriginal population of around 3,500 in the Shepparton region, the vision is for better health, education, and economic outcomes that help counter current disadvantage, including intergenerational disadvantage. Increasingly, Aboriginal communities across the country are seeking to enter into partnerships to improve the position of our people in a holistic sense. That is, the physical, social, emotional, spiritual, cultural, and economic well-being, bringing about total well-being for our communities. Underpinning all is the invincible spirit of our people and the spiritual, social, and personal relationship and connection with our ancestral river and environs. My sister Hillis Morris, a remarkable woman who was an activist, a poet, playwright, and most importantly, my sister. She expressed this in the poem that she wrote, Spiritual Song of the Aborigine. Let me quote a few lines of that poem. I am a child of the Dreamtime people, part of this land like the Nile gum tree. I am the river, softly singing, chanting our songs on my way to the sea. Our stories are meaningful. As we share our stories, we are sharing our past and our present and our belief. We are sharing the river, the spirit of the land, and life on it. It is all one story. My hope today is that each of you will be able to hear the stories, sense the importance of the river, understand the connectedness, and become one with them.
Thank you, Aunty Lois, for such an inspiring and fierce oration, and for your call for us all to listen deeply. It is now my pleasure to introduce the Honourable Minister Gabrielle Williams to provide a response to that wonderful oration.
Good evening all, and thank you for the opportunity to speak and reply to the wonderful oration by Dr. Aunty Lois Peeler tonight. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we all gather today, acknowledging that in this virtual environment we are gathered on many different lands. I pay my respects to elders, past, present and emerging, and the elders of all communities joining us here today. Thank you, Aunty Lois, for such a moving oration. Thank you for sharing such personal stories and deep reflections. I acknowledge your strong Yorta Yorta and Woiwurrung roots and your connection to the land and rivers of your country, which you have so eloquently shared with us today. The history and stories you hold are important, and you have reminded us that the importance of keeping oral histories alive cannot be understated. I also want to acknowledge your commitment to and achievements in education, including your role as principal of Warrawa Aboriginal College and the amazing work that you have done for your community over the years. It's an honour to have the opportunity to provide a short message of reply on such an important occasion. As Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, I'm proud to be able to play my part to support self-determination for Aboriginal communities. I'm proud to be a part of a government that is the first in Australia to embrace both the treaty and truth-telling elements of the Uluru Statement from the Heart. It was only last month we announced a truth and justice process to properly understand and formally recognise historic wrongs and address ongoing injustices for Aboriginal Victorians. This represents a significant and critical step forward on Victoria's path towards treaty. Aunty Lois, as you said, it is only when knowledge and understanding is integrated into the national psyche that we begin to truly grow as a nation. A truth and justice process is not only about uncovering the truth about past wrongs and sharing stories. It is also about publicly hearing and acknowledging these truths so no one can seriously doubt them. Such a process will offer us the space to experience and hear what Aunty Lois called Aboriginal narrative, understandings, knowledge and spirituality, not for mere curiosity, but as a contribution to a shared future and shared experiences. We know this will be difficult. The challenge is to make possible the deep understanding needed for respect and not to perpetuate the sorry history of exclusion. It must do and be an example of justice. Just as Aunty Lois spoke of a proud tradition of the Aboriginal community rising up to engage, inform and bring change, I believe the wider Victorian community is ready for this change too. On the 3rd of August this year, I attended the commencement of negotiations with the First Peoples Assembly of Victoria as the next critical step in the treaty process. As a government, we are committed to this process. We acknowledge that the government has not been a good friend and partner to Victoria's Aboriginal people, and we want to do things differently. I also want to touch on another important project in which the Victorian Government and others are partnering with the community to deliver strong local outcomes. In the country from which the Kayala Dangala oration has its roots, Yorta Yorta country in the Goulburn Murray region, we are working in partnership with the Rumballara Football Netball Club, the Kayala Institute, the University of Melbourne and the City of Greater Shepparton to deliver the Manara Centre for Regional Excellence. This Aboriginal-led project will contribute to the Goulburn Murray economy, enrich the cultural fabric of the region and strengthen education and employment pathways for Aboriginal young people. It's through this kind of work that we can fully hear the voice of Aboriginal people that Aunty Lois challenged us to hear. And through that, the Victorian Government can continue to understand what self-determination truly means and work together not just to achieve equity, but prosperity for all Victorian Aboriginal people. There is much work to do, and we are committed to doing it. More than that, we're committed to learning and to entering these partnerships with an open heart and an open mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for your thoughtful response. We recognise and appreciate the ongoing support of your government for the work the Kayala Institute and the University of Melbourne are doing in the Goulburn Valley to promote Indigenous culture and achievements. It is now my pleasure to introduce a panel of distinguished Yorta Yorta women, all of whom have achieved amazing academic and artistic success at the highest levels, and who, within their area of exceptional talent and expertise, exemplify the success, advancement, strength and the beauty of our Yorta Yorta people. So, welcome Dr. Lois Peeler, AM. Dr. Peeler is the Executive Director and Principal of Warrawa Aboriginal College in Healesville, Victoria's only Aboriginal school. Welcome to Dr. Lou Bennett, AM, musician, actor and Westpac Research Fellow at the University of Melbourne. Dr. Bennett's research centres on Aboriginal languages and their retrieval. For many of you, Dr. Bennett will be fondly remembered as the founding member of ARIA award-winning band Titters. And last, but definitely not least, I welcome Professor Deborah Cheetham, AO, renowned soprano, actor, composer and playwright. Professor Cheetham is Artistic Director of Short Black Opera Company, Dungala Children's Choir and Ensemble Dutala. So let me start with you, Aunty Lois, and firstly offer my personal thanks for delivering the 12th annual Dungala Kayla oration. As I'm sure we all agree, it was incredibly powerful and eloquent. For me as a Yorta Yorta woman, it was truly inspiring, as I'm sure it was for everyone who had the privilege of listening and watching your oration tonight. In your address, you have so clearly and eloquently outlined not only the historical backdrop of your family and also that of our Yorta Yorta people generally, but what needs to be acknowledged and acted on for our stories to be transmitted, adopted and held as sacred. So my question is, what do you think is required for a shared respect to be established between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians, and in turn, to empower our shared futures?
Well, thank you, Karen. Our very being is anchored in the stories handed down to us by our old people. Our oral history demonstrates our association with our country from the Aboriginal viewpoint. These stories draw on the lived experience of our people, and whether we like it or not, we have a shared history. The history of the region was written by non-Aboriginal peoples, which for the most part excludes us. And our history is very little known. So our history is our history and must be respected and received in the spirit in which the stories were given. The strength of spirit and determination shines through them all. So as I look back over the stories, education is a strong theme, and as an educator, I find that to be of particular interest. The chain of education is threaded through much of our Yorta Yorta people's stories, from the Maloga Mission, then Cummeragunja School under the teaching of Grandpa Shadrach James, and then school conducted in a bough shed on the riverbanks after the Cummeragunja walk-off, and that was conducted by my Auntie Hillis Briggs. And then Warrawa Aboriginal College, founded by Auntie Hillis's niece and namesake, Hillis Morris. So I look to those past leaders, and I too believe in education. But I believe in two-way education, not only for us to be educated in the best of current Australian education to enable us to develop an economic base for our future generations, but also for us to educate the broader community about our culture, our history, our struggle, our resilience, our leadership, and our aspirations for economic security and self-determination. Our initiatives in Aboriginal-led solutions to address, the issues in our community. That is my hope.
Deborah, as a trailblazing musician and composer, and someone who has so powerfully conveyed the stories of the Yorta Yorta people, could you please comment on the role of the arts in circumventing mere knowing and penetrating to deep hearing and understanding? And hearing the voices or the stories of previously unheard and unheeded peoples contributes to change.
Karen, thank you for that question, because I think there has never been a more important time or a more energized time than right now for remembering that the arts are not just some optional extra, some elective that we take at the end of year 8, something that we do in our spare time. The arts are our way of knowing the world and giving meaning to everything in it. And that very notion, that premise, is under attack in a way that I have not seen in my lifetime, and I've seen some attacks. The arts themselves are under attack in this country. And if the arts are our way of knowing and giving meaning, and they're under attack, what does that say about the battle that we're in right now? It says that we have, as First Nations people, as Yorta Yorta people, as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander or Indigenous people, we have a very important role to play right now in that battle. Because I often say there's never been an easier time to connect with our cultures through media, through social media, through the many resources and the work of our ancestors. There's never been more content that people can access and learn from. But there's this disconnect in non-Indigenous society, and it's this, that many people remain in ignorance. Those who've made the journey towards knowing are often happy to stay there, just in knowing. That's not enough. You need to move. You need to take that critical journey from knowing to understanding. And in Auntie Lois's powerful oration, we find this idea of an integration, not in the way that was used so cruelly against us, but an integration into our way of knowing and understanding. And this is where the arts are essential. So we need to return to this understanding that for us, the arts are essential, and that we must protect those opportunities for us to have our voice through song, through dance, through painting, through the stories that are handed down. Writing is a pretty recent concept. It's an important one in all of our lives now, in the 21st century, and has been for a few hundred years. But think about the millennia where the knowledge was embedded within us because we danced, painted, and sang that knowledge. We need to move as Australians from knowing to understanding. You know, there's a metaphor that I take from music. There are lots of very fine musicians in the classical industry in Australia. I work with many of them. I'm privileged to. And lots of them can sight read. What that means is they can look at a piece of music and play it almost instantly. I've never been able to sight read very well, and I wonder why that is. And I figured it out a couple of years ago. It's because you can't sight read culture. You can't just pick it up and say, oh yeah, I can do that. And in music, I hear so much music being sight read. And in our lives in Australia, I see so many people saying, oh yeah, I know Indigenous culture. I've got a painting on the wall. I've got an Archie Roach album over here. Yeah, that's a start. But that journey from knowing to understanding, that's a lifelong journey. That's a way of being. And the arts are the finest and the most potent way to get you there.
Thank you, Deb. So incredibly deep to hear those ways of knowing and understanding that are innate in our culture, I think, within us. Lou, you have contributed to the Australian arts industry for over 30 years and have worked with Indigenous communities all over the world for that time, both as an artist and academic. What's your perspective on the importance of Indigenous people taking their place in the academic, philosophical and political arenas? And also, do you agree that taking those places surpasses the value of simply preserving Indigenous cultures and ancient ways?
Thanks, Karen. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge our elder, Auntie Lois. Thank you very much for your beautifully powerful oration. It was, as I said earlier, it was really heartfelt and so inspiring. You know, it got me thinking about how I see myself in academia and the responsibilities that come with that role, in taking on the role of a doctor and how that works within a cultural context as well, within our communities. So we've always been politicians, philosophers and doctors. And so for me, I think that process was quite an organic process for myself. I mean, I've been in education for over 30 years as well. I studied my Bachelor of Arts in the early 80s before, just after I worked at Warrowa College, actually, and Auntie Lois got me a job out there when I first left home. And so for me, the understanding of what, and going back to what Deb has said about the importance of the arts and how we use the arts in our education. It's a vehicle for our education. When we sing together, whether it's the Kamargunja Choir or whether it's the Titters or whether it's the aunties singing the Sapphires, or Deb or myself, we're not just performing to entertain. There is another element of education, of knowledge that's been passed there. So again, it's a good transition. It's an organic transition, I think, for Aboriginal people to be in academia and to politics. Although there are differences in our politics to Western politics, there are differences to our way of learning and being compared to a Eurocentric way of looking. And the time that I've spent at the moment within the walls of Melbourne University and RMIT and Deakin University, it's very evident that the powers that be and the system that's there is still trying hard to find a category or a place for us. Instead of looking at our worldview and our way of being as a holistic way of being, not compartmentalising or siloing us into just Indigenous studies. It's a way of life. We are who we are. It's not just a noun being Yora Yora Jajawarang for me. It's about what I am in everyday life. And so I think as a philosopher, as an academic, as an artist, those things that come together, we can identify them maybe as separate things, but they are a really important holistic way of being. And it is important for Indigenous people to be across the board in the Western context of those categories, of those disciplines, of those career paths. And more, as we're seeing, are entering into those spaces. We're still having to deal with colonialism, though. Don't get me wrong. We're still having to deal with, racialization and systemic racism, as we've seen, over the years. It's not just our generation and the generation that are coming behind us that are fighting racism. It's been our generations way before that have set this strong path, as Auntie Lois has spoken about in her oration, that our elders have put us on this path. And it's been our elders and our ancestors that have nurtured us and taught us to get to this place where we find ourselves today.
Thanks, Lou. That's incredible and really inspiring but touching, because being a Yorta Yorta woman and thinking also, my great-great-grandfather, William Cooper, he learnt to read by candlelight. And I'm actually now doing my PhD in the final 6 months. So, those things are really inspiring to listen to. So now to each of you, Auntie Lois's hope is that we will be able to hear the stories, sense the importance of the river and understand the connectedness and become one with them. I'll go to you first, Lou. What is your hope?
Oh, goodness. So many hopes. So many hopes for, for the world, but so many hopes for our families and our next generations that are coming through. For me, I go back again to Auntie Lois and the hard work that you've done over the years with your, with the aunties, with the sisters, Auntie Zita, Auntie Fran, Auntie Margaret, Auntie Hillis, you know, the establishment of an Indigenous education institute has been something that has been long-standing in Victoria with Warrawa College. It's such an important and vital establishment that we need to make sure that it continues well, as it will with Auntie Lois at the helm. I would hope that we will see, for instance, educational institutions that have Indigenous departments no longer have Indigenous departments, because what I'd like to see is Indigenous universities. We've got this idea or this experience of Warrawa. It would be wonderful to see it expand so that our voices and our knowledges are in a safe, culturally relevant environment for all people to enjoy and to learn, but that it is embedded in our methodologies, in our way of being, in our epistemological way of learning and teaching, our pedagogies, our ontologies. And that's what that's my hope for the future.
Right. And what about you, Deborah? What's your hope?
Well, I'm going to echo what Lou is saying there. Our own university with Indigenous leadership in charge of Indigenous knowledges. I think that is absolutely fundamental and independent, as Warrawa is, an independent university, with all respects to the universities that we all represent here, to my own home currently at Monash, and to the work that I've done back in the days at VCA. I see that there's absolutely an essential need for our own independent university. Lou, I'm charging you with that task, and I'll be there beside you 100%.
I'm still working on it, sis. We're still working on it.
Look, let's do it. I think we owe it to Auntie Hillis and Auntie Lois to say that this college that has wonderful partnerships with senior secondary colleges to see the girls go into year 11 and 12, and that's a great partnership, an important one. But I think that we do need to find build that space for ourselves, because no one else is going to do that, not even in partnership, because of this one essential reason, which I'm sure that everybody on this panel understands. We have a duty to accomplish this protection of our culture. Other people may have an interest. Other people may have experience and knowledge and years of building relationships in Indigenous communities. We have a duty. That is our role while we breathe on this land of our ancestors. And nothing can replace that or come anywhere near to it. And it's what will ensure the success. But we have to get the well-meaning people out of the way and have our own self-determination through to postdoctoral levels, that feeding back into what we now call Australia. That will heal, that will build, that will help our nation mature. I can't see it happening any other way.
Imagine that, and Auntie Lois and Karen, imagine all of the Indigenous scholars, teachers, administration that work in education coming together across Australia. And as you said, Auntie Lois, in your oration, we have the capacity in our communities. We have more than enough capacity in our communities to make something like this happen. And in honour, like you said, of our ancestors, Auntie Lois, our old people, our elders, you know, it was Auntie Jerry, your mum, who taught me Inane, and it was you and the aunties who taught me Noguno Pa. And it was a very crucial time back in the 80s when I came to work out at Warrawa and understand who I was and what I was going through. And I'll never forget that, because it put me on this trajectory of wanting to speak my language, teach my language, and do it in a way that I knew I could, and that was through song. And so when I do my work, I I'm often reminded of my times out at Warrawa and how important that was for me for that short amount of time. Imagine the plethora of knowledge and support and nurturing we can give our Indigenous students, but also other Australians within the context of an Indigenous university, as you've done with Warrawa College, Aunt. Yeah.
Do it now. I'm impatient. I'm going to be impatient for this. And again, respect to all the universities here, but let's take all the funding they get for having us on board and just put it in the one place for us.
Right.
Let's just do it now. Let's do it now.
Manara, Centre of Regional Excellence.
That's what it is. Lou Bennett, Vice Chancellor.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, and a final word, I think we'll go to our beautiful Elder Arnie Lois and just ask you if you would like to conclude the panel today.
I actually have goosebumps from what you've been saying. It's just been so wonderful to go back over our journey. I think what I'd like to say in regard to Warrawa Aboriginal College, its uniqueness is about the fact that our culture is embedded in everything that we do. And so it's about our ways of knowing, doing and being, and that underpins everything that we do. So we look to our leaders of the past, and in fact, I have established a history walk that names our leaders: Uncle William Cooper, Uncle Doug Nichols, Uncle Jack Patton, Auntie Marge Tucker, many others, and this so that we will never, ever forget their leadership, and we will take courage and strength from their leadership in all that they've done. So we've got that behind us. That's, in our DNA. And I think that, it's something, the idea of a university, an Indigenous university, I would love to pursue that. In fact, at one time, I went to America to see what they were doing. I remember that very clearly. And, they were talking about establishing their own Indigenous universities from Canada and elsewhere. So we've got, this it's not an unheard of story. But let me say that telling our story is one thing, but whether or not our story is heard is quite another matter. But in recent years, we've seen a willingness, I think, by government to listen to our story. There are examples of partnerships between government and Aboriginal communities developed on place-based projects identified at the local community level. So I'm hopeful that decision makers of all persuasions, be it government or corporate or philanthropic, tertiary institutions, will listen and take action to support Aboriginal initiatives that will make a real difference in our communities. I believe that the Manara Centre for Regional Excellence is a key potential driver of Aboriginal economic growth to support the social, emotional, cultural and economic well-being of our whole community, bringing about total well-being of the entire community. So we've told our story, now it's up to others to listen. Thank you.
To conclude, I'd like to give my heartfelt thanks to our orator, Dr. Lois Peeler, our hosts, Kaila Institute's Executive Chair, Uncle Paul Briggs, OAM, and Vice Chancellor of the University of Melbourne, Professor Duncan Maskell. Our panellists, Professor Deborah Cheetham and Dr. Lou Bennett. And finally, as we opened, we now close with thanks to the Dangala Children's Choir. In their beautiful little faces and uplifting music, we see our future, talented, inspiring, and filled with joy and success. So until next year, thank you and stay deadly.